Okay, hello there. I thought I would try this one talking to you guys and talking you through the process of how to make beaded brick stitch fringe earrings. Um, I know on my channel I have a few other video playlists of me making these, but there's no sound. And I would put music over it, but I don't know how. So I thought on this one, instead of it being just mute, we could talk through the process. So for these particular earrings, I'm doing 3 colors, like I normally do for these. I just have a basic pattern that I follow with these. Just kind of regular increases. They're 11 strands. And so for this particular pair, I've chosen 3 different shades, all in an opal finish. And sorry, my mat is kind of messy here, trying to make sure I don't get anything mixed in. So, as you can see, this hank is a little bit tangled, but just try to get 1 strand of each. I'll wind up using 2 strands of the main color, and not usually I just need a few for the last one, but we'll see. So see, I have here this is just opal green, an opal kind of rose, and the opal greasy yellow, old style greasy yellow. So that's what we're working with tonight. And I use Nymo size 0. I don't know if you can read it in there, or 00. I use 00. It's pretty much the smallest thread, and since you have to work it back and forth in the top part of the earring, I find it's useful to use the smallest thread and the smallest needle that you're comfortable with. And I generally, for a pair of brick stitch earrings, use about 2 wingspans worth of thread, kind of half and half, part for the top, part for the bottom. I use 1 continuous length of thread for the whole thing. I know a lot of people use like beading wire for the top and then thread for the bottom, but I honestly don't. I've never tried it. That's not how I was taught. You know, it probably makes for a stiffer earring at the top, but this is just the way that I was taught and the way I've always done it. So now I'm using a thread conditioner, and this is, it's like Prairie Creek Indian. I'll look up it's an Etsy shop, native owned, and they make this thread conditioner, and it's great. I like using it better than just beeswax, and it smells good. It always has they all smell like honeysuckle. So there you go. And sometimes I just kind of run my finger along to make sure there aren't any big chunks of it left on there. And there's a sneeze. It's allergy season. So kind of gather up the bottom half of it, and I set it to the side on top of a table, and I'll show you how much I used here. And I just use 1 color for the top. These earrings are very simple. I don't like complicated patterns for me, they're just not relaxing to make. They kind of stress me out, and so I just do what I do. I do what I like to do. So, you know, thread your needle. This is a, can't really see it that way. It's a John James size 12 beading needle, I believe. It's either 12 or 13. I think it's a 12. And I pull down enough of this to make sure that I have enough set aside to finish the beading of the top. And so for this, it's 11 strands wide, and for the base row I do 2 beads per row, so I need 22. There's 4. 20, 21, and 22. So this is where I maybe differ from some people. I don't know, this is the way I was taught to do a ladder stitch. I'm holding the thread, the beads in between my fingers like this. I wrap the thread around the fingers of my non-dominant hand and kind of pull it around my pinky to keep it taut. And you skip the first 2, and then you do the next 2 up, and you go the reverse direction of the way you were beating them onto the thread, and then you pull it and it kind of comes off your finger and you get backed. And that's the beginning of your ladder stitch. And so you just do 2 at a time, go kind of through the back, pull it through. Oh. Focusing, you'll see. So this is one of those things that I've had a few different people over the years show me, you know, their method of making brick stitch earrings, you know, sitting around powwow and stuff. And so this is probably an amalgam of the way I was taught and the way I've developed kind of my own system over the years. Because I've been beading for a while. I know a lot of people started like at the beginning of the quarantine and stuff, but I've been beading since way before March 2020, that's for sure. I started in high school, so early 2000s. You know, but there are people out there, so many people that just like started and then they are rocking and rolling and are making just amazing stuff. I just kind of get stuck doing the same thing, but you know, it makes me happy. So I just do what I do. So see, here we have a ladder stitch. So you have this is like your foundation row. And then on top, this is where the brick stitch comes into play. And so what it is you have this row of thread, and there's a little kind of like a length of thread in between each set of beads. And what you're going to do is you're going to stitch a bead kind of on top of each of those spaces. And so there's 11 sets of beads here, and that means there's 10 gaps. So if you bead one bead into every gap, each row decreases by 1, and that's what gives you the triangular shape. But on your first set here, you want to put on 2 beads and go into the second gap, because if you don't, if you start on this first one, then your thread winds up on the outside and you see thread on the outside, and you don't want that. So I always work my needle towards me. I know some people do this differently and they work to the outside. Again, just the way I was taught. So you put your needle through the second gap, with your 2 beads for this new row, and then you're going to go up through the bottom of the second bead. Okay. So up through the bottom of the second, and then you're going to come down through the top of the first, and then you're going to come up through the second one again. And don't worry, you'll do that every row, so you'll see it a couple more times. And you can always look up like diagrams in case, you know, you need to see it like just written out. There's always diagrams and stuff online. Just Google brick stitch. And so then for this next one, you know, it's the third bead, you're going to go into the third space, and you just put your needle under that thread, pull it through, and then come back up. And so when you went on each of these, when you end, you'll be coming through the top of the last bead that you just stitched on. So you go in, pull it through, another bead, and then you go in through the bottom, come out through the top. And sorry for the sniffles, like I said, it's allergies. It's been windy today, it's crazy. And then it's supposed to be like 90 by the weekend. Weather's just insane. Sometimes everything jumps out at you. Just get reoriented there. And see this, you want to watch out for that if your thread wraps around like the bottom part. Just loosen it up, pull it around, and pull it through. So here's the last one on this row. You pull it through. Okay. So we've done our first row of brick stitch on top of our 2 bead thick ladder stitch row. And then you turn it around in your hands and you start back and you just do the same thing over again. And so for this first well, it's the first 2 stitches at the beginning of the row, but you put on 2 beads, you skip the first thread space, and then you go under the second, and then you come up, and then down through the first one, and then you come up through the second one. And so what you've done is you've kind of stitched a square around these 2 beads, and that anchors them in place. Okay. And from that point on, you just do one at a time. You go underneath the little thread bridge, and then come up through the bottom of the bead, under the thread bridge, and up through the bottom of the bead. And so since our first row was 11, the ladder stitch was 11 long, the second row of brick stitch, or the first row of brick stitch, was 10 beads long, and this one will be 9. And see, they just lay on top of each other, but each one is centered over the gap between the 2, and so they lay like you would bricks, and that's why it's called brick stitch. Somebody asked me that once, and I wasn't expecting it, and I like blanked, and I couldn't explain it. So now you know, and if somebody asks you, you can answer that they lay on top of those gaps just like a mason would lay bricks. Except you are laying beads. So we turn around, and I'm just realizing that I need to redo my nail polish. It looks terrible. So you put, for the first, at the beginning of the row, you put 2 beads on your needle, and you go under the second thread bridge, and you come up through the bottom of the second bead, down through the bottom of the first, and then up again through the bottom of the second for your square. So just keep going here. And you guys see my shirt? It says My Little War Pony. It's designed by Stephen Paul Judd. He's a Kiowa Choctaw artist, and it's produced by the company The Natives and TVS. They're a native-owned clothing company, so if you haven't heard of them, haven't seen their stuff, you should check them out. They've got some great designs. It's always nice to wear indigenous clothing. And I really like Stephen Paul Judd's designs because they're kind of subversive, I guess. Like, you wouldn't expect them. People don't know how to react a lot of times. But this is one of my favorites. And I love that it was purple. It was very like My Little Pony. And they carry Indian sizes, which is great. Thank you, the natives. So here we are at the end of this row. So back up 2. Go another second. Make sure they're kind of laying flat there. Sorry. I would edit all that stuff out, but I don't know how. It's something I'm gonna have to figure out. Video editing is something I've never done. It's all totally foreign. But, hopefully, you know, just Google and some trial and error, I'll work it out. Because I'd really like to put music over things so you don't have to hear me talking all the time, but don't have a totally silent video playing. So, but with this one, I'm sure you'll have a lot of background noise because I live on a pretty busy street. Like, I live in a rural area, but I live in like the most populous area and probably the noisiest neighborhood in this area, because I live like very close to a hospital and a bus route and all that, so I don't really notice it. But if I go back and watch this video, I'll probably hear a lot of din. This is a lot of din. See, I've gone on to the next one, and I did my 2 with a square stitch. That's something. If you have a pet, no matter how much you vacuum, their hair always winds up everywhere. So. Now we're getting pretty close here to... Let's see, I'll finish this row and show you what's happening. See, I got cut, and then I just pull it around. See? We're building our little triangle bob for the top. So, 2, skip the first, go on to the second thread bridge, up to the bottom, down through the top, up through the bottom of the second one again. And something you want to watch out for when you're doing this is try not to pull your needle through the thread. Like here, when you come in here, make sure that you're not going into the thread, because you just want to be in the same space but not actually pulling it through, because it'll compromise the integrity of your thread if you do that. It's not the end of the world, but it's just something you want to avoid. So there were 4 across that one. There's going to be 3 across this row, and then the next one will be 2, and that's when we'll bead the top part of the earring. Wait, no, that was 5. Never mind. I can count. This one will be 4. Come down, and then come back through the top. Pick up a bead, you go under the thread bridge, pull it through, put your needle back through the bottom of the bead, and pull it through the top. That was the end of that row, so we turn it around. And this, I just had 4, that row was 4 beads long, so this one will be 3. And I think there are different ways to brick stitch. Like if you want your beads to go in a straight line. You just add 2, but you don't skip the first bridge. So it doesn't all have to be this shape. There are many different patterns and designs for brick. Pull it through there. And you can see we're getting close to the top. And put 2 beads on. And that second one. Here. And down. Come up. And then, so you have 2 beads at the top now. I know it's out of focus. It's hard, but so you have 2 beads at the top, and then what I do is I don't turn it. I just pick up 4 beads on my needle, and then I go in back through the first bead of that row and pull it taut, and then go up. And see, there's your top. Okay. So then what I do is I come down, then I went back up, and then I come back down. Then I'm gonna go through here again, just because this is where your earring hook will go through this little loop here in between these beads, and it will rub on this thread, and so I like to have a few layers of thread through there just so that it's not dependent on like one little thread holding it all together. And so once you've gone through that a couple of times, what you want to do is just weave your thread back and forth through here however you see fit. Everybody does it differently. You know, I've had, you know, the first person that taught me was you want to go back and forth through every single bead as many times as possible, as many times as you can get your needle through it. Another, you know, you watch videos or see other people and they don't do it as many times. I don't like to go through the middle quite as much because your thread has a tendency to show the more and more you go through each area. So I just kind of go down and then go through the ladder stitch area, and there's this point in between the second and third stitches tends to always have a gap for me, and so I try to like stitch that up with an extra row, a little back and forth right here, and then I just try to keep that loose thread taut in my fingers while I do this. Just weaving back and forth. And that's, if you can hear that now, that's my dog behind me. She's, you know, supervising. So, come down. But then it's an odd number, so I don't go all the way through. I go into this second to last one. And then I go up to the row where there's 4. Because if I go up to 3, then it just doesn't work out. I go up to 4, and then I go across. And then this side. I stop a couple short of the bottom. And then I use a thread zap. And I pull this taut. And then I zap it there. And the thread zap keeps the thread from fraying. So, you can see here, sorry about the nail polish. That's the top of your earring. Okay. And so in part 2 of this video, I'll walk you through how to attach the fringe to the bottom. Okay, thank you for watching. If you like this video, you know, thumbs up, subscribe. I know I only have like 6 subscribers right now, and they think they're all people I know, except for maybe a couple. So, alright, thank you, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!